Hello and welcome to the Bearded Mystic podcast, and I'm your host, Rahul Singh. Thank you for joining me today on this very first episode, and thank you for either watching or listening to this podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about what this podcast is going to be about and what you can expect from the Bearded Mystic podcast, and also we're going to discover together what exactly is a mystic. What is the Bearded Mystic podcast about? Well, it's a podcast where we'll be discussing everything related to spirituality. So if you have an interest in spirituality, this podcast will be something you may enjoy. And what I plan to do with this podcast is, because I have a keen interest in the spiritual texts like the Upanishads, the Ashtavakra Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, Buddhist text that you have, the Guru Granth Sahib, the writings and the collected works of the mystics from all traditions, in both Eastern and Western religions. I believe that when we look at what they've written and we comprehend to the best of our abilities what they're trying to say and what they're trying to point to, the more we think about it, the more we discuss it, the deeper that teaching, settles within us. Because if we just see things at a surface level, or we just skim read something, we're not grasping the full intent. So I think the one thing I do want to do with this podcast is look into those texts, some verses here and there, or maybe do series on these verses or a particular text, and really go into it and really explore what it means or what it may mean. So that will be something which I will find very interesting and will definitely learn from. So the podcast, it will aim to bring mysticism, back to understanding that it's about the truth, experiencing the truth, the union of the truth. Now, if you have a look at some hashtags on social media, you'll find, quite surprisingly, that when you type in mysticism, there's all sorts out there. People linked to like chakras, energies, astral projection, Reiki, stones, crystals, angels, all sorts. But I believe that, and there's nothing wrong with those things, that's fine. If people believe in that thing, that's okay. But for me, the mystics, if you look at, people like Rumi, like Meister Eckhart, Rabindranath Tagore, or any of the, major spiritual leaders of every tradition, they've all talked about union with the truth. They've all highlighted that is the most important thing. So I kind of feel that that's one thing we do need to bring back, is bring in that conversation, that mysticism is actually about our personal union with the truth, our personal oneness with the truth. I'll also give, practical tips on how to grow spiritually, what's helped me, and, sharing basically what's helped me, because I believe in sharing. We enhance not only, the understanding of the listener, but even the one that is speaking is also learning. So that's why I feel it's very important to do that, to give practical tips and to really, strive towards that union with the truth, or seeing reality as it is, because that is the ultimate goal. And that's the goal that I want to be discussing here on the podcast. I would like to, this is a dream of mine. I would love to be able to interview like spiritual teachers and even spiritual seekers who have really excelled in their tradition, because they can really enhance our spiritual journey. And, we can learn from everyone. There's not one person that we can't learn from. So this is one thing that I definitely will love to do one day, is to interview people, because everyone has a great lesson within them, and I think it's all about giving them the opportunity to reveal that lesson to us. And then in terms of the duration of the podcast, it'd be around like 20 to 30 minutes each podcast episode. I plan to do 2 episodes a week, and they'll be uploaded like every Sunday and Thursday on all the podcast streaming platforms, and also on YouTube as a video. So that would be something to look forward to. So every Sunday and Thursday. I was born in the UK. I am now living in Atlanta, USA. I am married to a very beautiful wife, and my day job is with a major corporation in the US. So I'm living a fairly normal life. I'm not somewhere off in a cave, or I haven't joined a monastery, or I'm not a monk. I'm living in today's world, in America, and in apparent materialism, and still striving to lead a spiritual life. And I find that when you lead a spiritual life in the world, you not only benefit the world by being in it, but you more or less benefit yourself, because this is where the ego really gets tested. This is where the ego is really seen for what it is. Because in the cave, you can forget that you've got an ego. There's only you around. But when you're in the world, you're challenged. And I think that's the one reason why I really love the householder aspect of spirituality, that living in the world is much better. So I've been a spiritual practitioner for like around 20 years now, over 20 years. I've always been interested in spirituality from a very young age. I think I've been interested even before I entered the double digits. So you can kind of see that this interest of mine has always been there. It's not something that I've just approached in my late 20s or early 30s. I've had this passion for it from a very young age. And, I thank my parents for that, because they allowed me to grow spiritually. And I don't think it's ever easy to let anyone grow spiritually, because it's challenging. There's a lot of challenges that go with that. And my parents were, very supportive and very nice to let me grow. And even now with my wife, she's amazing in allowing me to grow spiritually. Again, not easy, but she, and I think in these later podcast episodes, I think I want to discuss why it's such a challenge to be in the world and be spiritual, what challenges it brings to relationships, because it does. And as much as you may find a level of peace within the mind, but you've also got to be aware of what that brings around to other people. That to me is an integrated being, and that's what a mystic is. They're integrated, so they understand the impact of what they do. In terms of, like, if I think about one tradition or philosophy that I really adhere to and that I really like, and that I completely would mostly agree with, shall I say, instead of completely, mostly agree with, would be Advaita Vedanta, or non-duality. I think that philosophy just makes most sense to me. You don't need a god, you don't need a belief system, you don't need to believe in anything other than that there is a reality that is far beyond this transactional world that we see, this transactional reality, that behind it there is something that transcends time, that transcends place, that transcends form, that transcends shape or shapes. It transcends the material. And I feel non-duality, the philosophy in that, allows us to explore that, and allows us to really understand the reality. And you have to see reality as it is. You can't, and it's so immediate. It's not something that you have to work towards. You can experience non-duality right now, right here. There's no, like I said, it's beyond time and beyond place. So we can do it now. We can realize it now, but our mind is just so it's so heavily influenced by our ego that we believe in our story, we believe in our identity. We think that this body and mind is, or thoughts and emotions is our identity. You know, we're affected by conditioning. So there's a lot of things which that hinders our growth or hinders our immediate realization of the truth. So that's basically a bit about me and a bit about what I believe in. But I would also say that this leads us perfectly to, well, what is a mystic? Well, a mystic is someone who is seeking or has experienced union with the spiritual truths in their lives. So what that means is that they're on the path to eradicating the false sense of separation and removing the false reality of the ego. Now, you see, what tends to happen in life, and I find that this happens to me as well a lot of times, is that we tend to be very dual about our spirituality. We think, well, we have to be spiritual at one time, and then, but in the world, in my job, I have to be something else. When in reality, I have to be the same. And actually, it creates more stress when we add on to these identities. So, and you know, how many identities do we want? You know, we may have one identity at work, one identity at home, one identity with our friends. How many masks or faces are we going to keep up? So for me, the mystic gets rid of all that, and they have like the faceless face. They are, you know, completely devoid of any image, because they refuse to be put into an image. They refuse to have a form. They refuse to have a label put onto them. And that's why mystics are so hard to understand, because they live in a different paradigm. Or you could say that they've enhanced their lives so much that where we are, you know, we've not been able to understand their growth. And this is what the spiritual journey is really about, is getting to terms with understanding that growth. And you know, let me give you an example of a mystic, one that I've mentioned before. Rumi, he belonged to the Islamic tradition, but he followed the spirituality that was taught by Shams, and he, Shams was his guru, his preceptor, his teacher. And Rumi had his experiences of awakening, of deep awakening, you know, and I think he had many experiences of awakening, and then obviously enlightenment occurred, and that's when he started giving out his own philosophy. But before that, you know, Shams worked on Rumi being connected to the truth, being one with the truth, experiencing that oneness with what we may call God. So, you know, this is what is a mystic. They are completely in union with the truth, and that experience is what makes them a mystic. There's a wonderful quote by another great mystic of the Christian tradition, and that is Meister Eckhart. And he says that theologians may quarrel, but the mystics of the world speak the same language. And this is one thing I really believe in, that although we may follow different traditions, we may follow different paths, we may believe in different spiritual teachers, or we may not believe in a spiritual teacher but believe in a particular doctrine. Whatever it is, we're all on that journey towards the truth. Our destination is all the same. Nobody has a different destination. And that destination is within us. And until we go on that journey, everything may look different. And also, I like to say that although the mystics themselves may look like they follow a tradition, they've actually essentially transcended tradition. And again, that's what makes them really unique. That's what makes them really interesting to learn from. And like I said, there's so much to learn from, and we'll learn so much more when we go further into more episodes of the podcast. And there's one other quote by Karl Rahner. I think he's a Christian theologian, but he actually says something really interesting, which I really believe in, that in the days ahead, you will either be a mystic, meaning the one who has experienced God for real, or nothing at all. And this is the reality, I think. We've got to a point now in spirituality or in the spiritual circles where if you have not experienced the truth as it is, then you haven't really experienced anything at all. You haven't really achieved anything. What we've done is picked up new toys and not necessarily awakened ourselves or enlightened ourselves. So I really agree with what Karl Rahner says here, that the mystic is the one that experiences God for real. God, truth, reality, whatever we want to call it. But it's about seeing life as it is, seeing reality as it is, and not seeing it through the lens of our ego, but seeing it through the lens of our awareness. And that is what a mystic is. Someone that sees the world through the eyes of awareness. And this awareness that is choiceless, formless, imageless, without label, is attributeless. This is that awareness that I'm talking about. To be fair, say I've started on this journey and I want to know more. How can I feel close to my spirituality? How can I start? How can I connect to the truth? What can I do? What can I absolutely do to experience the truth? Simply just take a breath, take an inhalation of breath and an exhalation of breath. We don't have to do much. If you want, take a deep breath in and out, but just be aware of breathing. That in itself is a meditation, and that in itself actually brings you to feel grateful for life. Sometimes we don't understand how amazing it is to be alive, that in today's day and world we get to enjoy so much. And, just by simply breathing, we can connect to our higher self. We can connect to the real self that we are. And it's all about understanding that is the simplest form of meditation. So I would say, for me, it's just, being aware of the breathing, of each breath, just being aware of it, being alert towards it. That in itself is so important. And again, another thing that happens, and this is why I believe meditation is the most important requirement or necessary tool for enlightenment, is because it guides you to go within. So when you take a deep breath in and out and you're aware of it, you automatically, I feel this for myself, that I close my eyes and I just experience that space within me that isn't affected by anything, that isn't influenced by anything. And I don't know whether this is from years of meditating, but I really feel that this is the most natural thing to feel. It's always there within us. It's not like it's disappeared anywhere. And the mystics always talk about this. And I feel that I want to be at that place, and I think a lot of us want to be at that place where that space is always within us, and we're aware of that space 24/7 in the midst of activity, like the scriptures talk about. Although, yes, we may say that it's not practical to be done 24/7, But even if it's for most of the day, that's still an achievement. So I would say if you want to really feel what it's like to be a mystic, you can just simply take a deep breath in and out and just be in the here and now. And it's as simple as that. Nothing complicated. So yeah, well, this leads to the end of the podcast, really. And what I want to say is give a few points to kind of just highlight what has been said. That, you know, this podcast is going to be about the journey towards union with the truth, and that's the aim. That's what I really want to do. And that any religious tradition has a mystical element to it. So let's not forget that. Like I mentioned, that everyone's journey may be different, but the destination is the same. And the wise one knows that the destination was always in the journey. And another thing that I think is so important to kind of recognize is that there's like 7 billion and more counting paths towards the truth. Each one of us, I believe, is a religion in itself. And each one of us is a scripture within ourselves. It's all about understanding and realizing it and comprehending that we are that. So I hope that this podcast really helps us achieve that. And like I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, that meditation is that great way that can trigger our journey towards mysticism. This will start it. So like if you want to today, just for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, just be aware of your breath, and you will get closer to feeling like a mystic and being a mystic. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Bearded Mystic podcast. Please do remember to follow or subscribe to this channel, and please do leave a review for this podcast. If you feel that any of your friends or family will enjoy this podcast, do share it with them. And do follow me on social media, and I'll leave the links below in the show notes. And do remember that a new episode is uploaded every Sunday and Thursday. Until next time, take care. Bye.